Most people picture phone cloning as something out of a spy movie, a physical device copying your phone in seconds. In my opinion, that image is mostly wrong, and it actually makes people less prepared, because real phone cloning today usually happens without anyone ever touching your physical device at all. Today, I am not going to give you movie-style warnings. I want to walk you through what actually happens, what the real warning signs look like, and what you can genuinely check yourself. This video focuses entirely on awareness and protection. It will not explain any method of actually cloning or intercepting a device. Welcome to Cyber Safety Brief, where we explain simple cybersecurity advice for everyday Americans. This video is based on authentic, legal, and publicly available cybersecurity information. Everything here is for awareness and protection only. Point 1. What cloning actually means today. Let us start by clearing up the biggest misconception. What most people underestimate is that modern phone cloning rarely involves someone physically copying your device. Far more often, it involves someone gaining control of your phone number itself through a process where an attacker convinces a mobile carrier to transfer your number to a different device entirely. Once that happens, calls and text messages meant for you, including security codes, can be redirected to the attacker's device instead. Here is a real-life type of example. Someone suddenly loses cell service entirely, with no calls or texts coming through, despite their phone showing full signal bars. In my opinion, this is one of the clearest and most overlooked warning signs, because most people assume it is just a network problem rather than recognizing it as a potential sign their number has been redirected elsewhere. What I personally think adds to the confusion is that the term cloning itself is somewhat outdated in how most people use it. The movie-style version, where a physical device is copied bit for bit, is far less common today thanks to modern security measures built into phones and carrier networks. What has largely replaced it is this number-based redirection, which requires no physical access to your device at all, just enough personal information to convince a carrier representative that the request is legitimate. Point 2. The sudden loss of service warning sign. Let us dig deeper into this first warning sign, because I think it deserves more attention than it usually gets. What I personally think makes this sign so dangerous is how easily it gets dismissed. A dead zone, a network outage, a software glitch. There are a dozen innocent explanations people jump to before considering something more serious. The way I look at it, if your phone suddenly loses the ability to make calls or receive texts with no clear explanation, and it lasts more than a few minutes in an area where you normally have good service, it is worth taking seriously enough to actually check. A real-life type of scenario. Someone's phone shows no service for an extended period, they assume it is a carrier issue, and only discover later that their number had been transferred to another device during that exact window. Safe steps here. If this happens, contact your mobile carrier directly using another phone or method and ask specifically whether there have been any recent account or SIM changes on your line. What I personally think is worth remembering is the timing pattern here. A genuine network outage typically affects many people in your area at the same time and often gets acknowledged publicly by the carrier fairly quickly. An unauthorized number transfer, on the other hand, affects only you, while everyone else around you continues using their phones normally. If you notice you are the only one having this problem, that is a meaningful clue pointing away from a simple outage. Point 3. Unexpected account activity and verification codes. The second major warning sign involves something a lot of people notice but do not immediately connect to phone security. What most people underestimate is how often unauthorized number redirection is only discovered because of unrelated account activity elsewhere, like a password reset notification for an account you did not try to reset, or a verification code you did not request. Since text message codes are still widely used for account security, someone controlling your phone number can potentially use that access to get into other accounts entirely. Here is a real-life type of example. Someone receives an email notification about a password change on an account they never touched, and only after investigating further do they realize their phone had lost service around the same time. In my opinion, these two events together, unexpected account activity and unexplained loss of service, are a strong combined signal that something serious may be happening, even if each one alone might seem minor. What most people underestimate is just how much can be accessed using only a phone number as the starting point. Many account recovery processes accept a text message code as sufficient proof of identity, which means someone controlling your number does not necessarily need your original password at all. They can often simply request a new one, sent as a code to what is now their device, and walk straight into your account from there. Let me know in the comments if you agree with this. Do you think people rely too heavily on text message codes for account security? Point 4. Why this targets specific people, not random ones. I want to spend a moment on who tends to be targeted by this specific type of attack, because I think understanding this helps you gauge your own realistic level of risk. What most people underestimate is that this type of attack usually requires the attacker to already have some personal information about the target beforehand. Things like your name, address, or basic account details, often gathered from previous, unrelated data breaches, or through information that is simply publicly available. This is why people with a larger public presence, or those who have been part of a well-known data breach in the past, may face a somewhat higher risk than the average person. In my opinion, this does not mean you should panic if you have ever been part of a breach, since a huge number of people have been affected by at least one over the years. What I personally think matters more is simply recognizing that this personal information exists somewhere already, which is exactly why the additional carrier account protection we will talk about next matters, regardless of how much of your information may already be out there. Point 5. Checking your account with your mobile carrier. Let us talk about the actual steps you can take to check whether something like this has happened. What I personally think people underestimate is how much information their mobile carrier account actually provides if you know where to look. Most carriers let you review recent account changes, including SIM swaps, number transfers, and device changes, either through their app or by calling customer support directly. If you ever notice unexplained loss of service combined with unusual account activity elsewhere, calling your carrier and specifically asking about recent SIM or account changes is one of the most direct ways to confirm what is going on. A real-life type of scenario. Someone calls their carrier after noticing suspicious signs, and the carrier confirms a SIM swap request was made recently, one the actual account holder never authorized. In my opinion, catching this quickly through a direct call is far more effective than waiting to see if the problem resolves itself. Point 6. Protecting your carrier account before it happens. Now let us talk prevention, because this is where I think most advice online falls short. What most people underestimate is that their mobile carrier account itself needs its own security, separate from their phone's screen lock or their email password. Most major carriers offer an additional security feature, sometimes called a port-out PIN or account passcode, which is specifically designed to prevent someone from transferring your number without that extra verification step. In my opinion, this single setting is one of the most underused protections available, mainly because carriers do not always make it obvious that it exists. What I personally think everyone should do after watching this video is call their carrier or check their account settings specifically for this feature and enable it if it is not already active. Here is a real-life type of example. Someone attempts to have a target's number transferred to a new device but is unable to complete the process because the carrier requires a separate PIN the attacker does not have. This single extra step, something that takes just a few minutes to set up, is often enough to stop the entire attempt before it even gets close to succeeding. Point 7. Reducing your reliance on text-based security codes. Here is a broader shift I think is worth making, beyond just securing your carrier account. The way I look at it, since text message codes can potentially be intercepted if someone gains control of your number, moving toward app-based authentication for your most important accounts, like email and banking, adds an extra layer of protection that does not depend on your phone number at all. These authentication apps generate codes directly on your device rather than relying on a text message that could theoretically be redirected. What I personally think is the smartest approach is not abandoning text-based codes entirely, since they are still far better than no extra verification at all, but prioritizing app-based authentication specifically for your most sensitive accounts, like your primary email and financial accounts, where the potential damage from unauthorized access is highest. A real-life type of scenario worth mentioning. Someone sets up app-based authentication for their email months before ever experiencing anything suspicious. When their phone number is later compromised, the attacker is unable to access their email at all because the verification code needed lives on the authentication app itself, not tied to the phone number that was redirected. In my opinion, this single decision, made proactively and with no immediate threat in sight, ends up being the difference between a minor inconvenience and a genuinely serious breach. Point 8. What to do if you confirm something happened. If you do confirm that your number was redirected without your permission, here is the practical path forward. What I personally think matters most in this moment is speed. Contact your carrier immediately to reverse the unauthorized change and secure your account with that additional PIN we talked about earlier. Then, review your most important accounts, especially email and banking, for any unauthorized activity that may have happened during the window your number was compromised. Change passwords on anything that looks suspicious and enable app-based authentication going forward wherever possible. I do not think this is about being paranoid. I think it is about being prepared, and knowing exactly what steps to take in order removes the panic that usually makes these situations feel so overwhelming. What most people underestimate is how much calmer this entire process feels when you already know the steps ahead of time, rather than trying to figure them out for the first time in the middle of a stressful situation. Taking just a few minutes today to check whether your carrier account has this extra protection enabled is a small action that can prevent a significant amount of stress and potential financial damage later. I would also like to know your opinion. Did you know your mobile carrier account had its own separate security settings before watching this video? If this video helps you understand online safety more clearly, like the video and subscribe to Cyber Safety Brief for more simple cybersecurity advice. Stay alert, stay informed, and stay safe online. Before you go, comment below whether you have ever experienced unexplained loss of phone service and what turned out to be the cause.